Everybody, here we are again, looking to spend our Friday evening doing some auditing. I hope everyone is fine and ready for some good intensive work for the rest of the evening. Not much response so far. I guess I will get going. Apologies for starting 3 minutes late. Just a reminder, as Mentor says, that on Wednesday next week, the night before the exam, from 5 till 6, I will be here doing a 1-hour surgery. During that surgery, I will take a look at some issues from the revision mock exam, which many of you, I hope, have done. I've just done a 1-hour surgery. I finished 9 minutes ago, for the P7 students, and we spent probably 1/3 of that surgery looking at the revision mock and important lessons to be learned from it. But before we get to next Wednesday, we have got to get through tonight, haven't we? And our final revision session, so let's get going. So, as far as the final session is concerned, we will be looking at some bits and pieces just to make sure we've covered a few bits on the syllabus. We've got a case study question to finish off from Wednesday, which we'll be doing shortly. We've got a little bit more on... on what else have we got to do? We've got some more substantive testing. We've got, perfect, I say substantive testing just as Jasmine says hello. It must be fate. We've got a little bit of audit reports, I think, coming up, internal audit, computer-assisted audit techniques. So lots and lots to get through. So let us begin with the question we were doing on Wednesday, as we have one part of it left to do. So you remember on Wednesday, wow, look at all of that, that we identified with this question, which is true of so many questions, that in fact you could achieve a lot of the marks on this exam before you had even read the story. And parts B, C, D and E, 18 of the 30 marks, you can pretty much score 18 out of 18 without even having read the story. But the one thing we held back on was, because the story eats up time, part A. Because part A, we cannot do the implications and the recommendations of the deficiencies unless we know what the deficiencies are. So we got as far at the end of the evening of going through the story and identifying what looks like about 7 possible deficiencies. Remembering that we're looking out for the word not, but also wherever an individual person is mentioned and it says this person is doing this, ask yourself, is that the right person to be doing that procedure? If it says, I don't know, a clerk is approving something, well, clerks are relatively junior, should they be approving anything? If it says a particular department is doing something, ask yourself, is that the department who should be deciding those sorts of things? Now, I think this is quite a difficult question. I think parts B, C, D and E are okay, but I think it's quite a difficult question because there's only about 7 or maybe 8 if you push it. About 7 or 8 deficiencies in there. There you go. So it's December 11, question number 1. So as long as you can spot the deficiencies, and we numbered those on Wednesday night, all we've got to do now is implications. So what could go wrong for the company because of their deficiencies, and then make a recommendation. And as I said on Wednesday night, somewhere, yes, there we go, look. When you're doing the recommendation, We've got to make sure we focus on adding some value and saying who should do the recommendation, when they should do it, how they should do it. Try to add a bit of practical help. Now, one very important thing to realise is that just as you can do the parts of the question out of order, and if I was doing this, I would do part B, then C, then D, then E. I would leave space and go back and slot A in. Just leave too much space. Leave more than you think you'll need. But also, within each part of a question, you don't have to do it in order. And having identified these deficiencies, it's tempting in my answer so I'm just seeing Jenny's F9 question, it's tempting to go and pick out those deficiencies which we feel happier explaining. You don't have to explain them in the order of the story. So I would do number one first, because with number one, the implications are obvious because the question tells you. So we've got the clocking in situation. Now, another important point here, you will never get many marks, possibly no marks at all, for repeating information in the story. So this is how I'd do it. Okay, so part A. I would do implications and recommendations. And if the first one we're going to talk about is the clocking in, instead of writing in my answer what it said in the story, no monitoring supervision of the clocking in or out process, well, that's quite a lot of words, and we all know exams are time pressured. So why don't you just write clocking in as a heading? And then we can say implications with no monitoring, and then get into giving your bit of the answer. Staff might clock in, or out their colleagues, as of course has done already. But when you're talking about implications, don't just say that, explain how the company would suffer. Meaning, the company paying for hours not worked. Now, I've told you, aim for 2 to 3 lines for every point you want to make. I've only got 4 lines I'm writing on less than half the page. That is less than 2 lines of writing, and that tells me to try and add a little bit more explanation. Not a huge amount more, but a bit more. And when adding more explanation, there are various ways of doing that. You could give an example, but we've already done that, clocking in your colleagues. Or you can take an approach that I call the Henry approach. Henry is my 7-year-old son, and Henry has a habit of saying, "Yeah, Dad, but why?" Well, if you don't monitor clocking in, that's bad. Why? Because people might clock in their friends. Oh, why is that a problem? Because that means we'd be paying people for hours they didn't work. Oh, why is that a problem? Because our profits will go down and our shareholders will be unhappy. Oh. So sometimes that's a good way of just getting a bit more out. Paying for hours not worked, which will reduce company profits. And there we've got a nice, good explanation of why this is a problem. Recommendations. There's a wonderful conversation going on about F9, which is just too bizarre. I blame Rob Sowerby, you know. I'm going to complain to him after this. So, recommendations. Now, this is where it can all go horribly wrong, because of course, what you want to say is, monitor the clocking in. I know, but that's obvious and it's not 2 or 3 lines of writing. And that should be telling you, oh, I'd better write some more. How are you going to monitor? Who is going to monitor? How often are they going to monitor? When are they going to monitor? And that's where you can use the story and come up with something a bit better than just monitoring clocking in.